George Lucas!
I take it you're here for the Star Wars convention. You're not.
Oh my God, George Lucas!
All of the films that Lucasfilm has made have become culturally significant in one way or another. And people have a very emotional connection to props and costumes and artwork because it's part of something much larger that really affected them. So when I walk around here, everything that I see fills me with memories of, you know, a movie that I watched, an experience that I had.
It's pretty incredible to see all of the costumes, and it was like nerd's paradise. All of a sudden I was 12, like, that's so cool.
No matter how much you romanticize a weapon or a mask or a costume or a character, you come and touch it and somebody had to paint it and build it and cast it out of foam or wood or plastic or what have you.
It's really wonderful and heartwarming for me to come up here and see these models that I built almost 30 years ago, because it brings back so many memories. You don't think about these things for so long, and then you see them and it's like, oh gosh, I remember when I built that. Whoops, 10 people just died. It's odd though, we didn't build them to last forever, and we certainly didn't build them to go out into traveling shows and be in museums. And so it's kind of odd to see them up here where they won't let us touch them, and if something breaks off, they photograph where it came off and they put it in a little plastic bag and seal it up.
When you see them and you realize when they lit them, they had a life, they were a creature. Yoda. To see Yoda like, moving not. CG take work is.
In 2001, ILM brought history to life like never before with the epic World War II battle sequences in Pearl Harbor, another series of landmark achievements for the company. In 2004, they created the first extreme close-up of a realistic digital human for Lemony Snicket's A Series of Unfortunate Events, ushering in a new era for digital actors. The realism paved the way for the highly anticipated Pirates of the Caribbean films.
When the script for Pirates came in, the gag was that our crew of pirates were cursed so that when they appeared in moonlight, they were these tattered skeletons, which immediately brought back memories of Jason and the Argonauts. There's a scene of sword-fighting skeletons that's an iconic scene. That image came immediately to my mind when I read that in the script. It's a really fun opportunity to pay homage to Ray's work, but to update it with some of the newer technology.
The Pirates of the Caribbean series made extensive use of in-camera motion capture technology, otherwise known as iMocap. This advanced system of sensors records actions of human actors and uses the information to animate digital characters.
I mean, the characters were all created by the visual effects. It wasn't makeup. They were walking around in gray suits. And, it's very difficult, for actors sometimes to interact with a character that's just wearing a gray suit with a beanie. But since our actors are so well trained and so professional, they did a fantastic job. The most challenging thing on Pirates was Davy Jones.
We had motion capture trackers on him. He had all these silly dots on his face, but Bill Nighy was that character. And I think for me, that was the first time I really saw a direct transference of someone's performance onto a CG creature. And it was so complex and so layered. You've got all these tentacles. Trying to get them to operate like they really would is a major challenge, because in the computer, although you've got the shape of the tentacles, if they're going in different directions, they'll just penetrate right through each other. The idea that they would hit and react is just not in the computer. It has to be worked out, and it takes a lot of calculations to make something like that work.
It was just so incredibly detailed, and the work that, the model builders and the texture painters and all the guys that contributed to that show in all the different ways of just bringing this immensely complicated crew and ship to life.
Technology changes very quickly and gets better and better, so it gives the artists at ILM and their supervisors more fun to play with, more things to play with, more toys, and it pushes the limits, which is exactly what we want to do.
We thrive on developing new techniques to achieve something that's never been done before, so imagination is unencumbered.
Inspired by the original 1953 version of War of the Worlds, Steven Spielberg teamed with ILM once again to push visual storytelling to a whole new level.
Well, I had this crazy idea one day when I was doing my storyboards. I had sketched out a 3-minute dialogue scene between the two kids and Tom Cruise in the car after they escaped New Jersey. I began sketching it in cuts, you know, and close-ups and profiles and over-shoulder shots, and then threw all that stuff out because that wasn't exciting enough. And I thought, well, there's got to be a way to do this. Maybe, what if I did this all in one shot? And then I had some of the previs guys come in, and I previs the entire scene with a moving camera. That actually went through the car at one point, went through the back window at another point, went out into the middle of the turnpike to make room for cars that are passing, and then went back into the window again. And it was an impossible dream, and I knew it was not achievable, because I didn't quite know how to blend it. Where were the blend lines going to be? How do we glue these disparate pieces together to make it seem like it's one shot? So when I showed Dennis Muir in the previs, Dennis said, right away, and this time he didn't even have to think about it, he said, you can do it in 2 shots. I said, where's the break? He said, when you come back in through the car, through the back of the car. And then when you're pulling back out to the high crane shot at the end, the car moves off into the vanishing point. So Dennis thought that was going to be no problem.
I don't think there's much clue that you're seeing an effect in those things because there's no camera cuts. It's done much more like documentary style. And that's got a really great sense of surprise when that happens. And it's much more realistic and immediate. And that's hard to do with any kind of effects.
Every little thing as a collection of what we do in the history of all the films that we've done kind of goes into every movie that we're doing right now. Transformers represents a colossal collection of all these different stair steps of ideas on the way. By this point in time in computer graphics, we have learned how to do hard, shiny objects, yes, but have we really conquered how they're lit? Have we really conquered a more realistic style of animation? Or a cooler style, let's say? No. We're constantly reassessing, what can we do better? Then we start designing the robots. And I think initially a lot of the robots were made out of all these questionable materials that look very CG-ish. And we actually started building a couple of robots out of like these bony fragments that look like, you know, what is it, alien space stuff. We don't know what it is. Michael Bay, our director, and myself, we kept going back and forth on this. You know what, this is not working. Let's just go to car parts and just start drawing from real world, because you and I go to the movie and if we see something where we don't quite understand it, it looks fake. If you want it to look photoreal, well, what does that mean? It's got to look like people made it. And so that's why we gravitated all toward, you know, these designs that were more or less things that we know.
I think the transformation scenes from the first movie, you know, were something that people had never seen before. So there were about 10,000 moving parts. All those pieces have to move and articulate with one another. Technology-wise, that stuff didn't exist before. So again, you know, it puts ILM on the leading edge of technology breakthrough.
On Iron Man, we drew a lot from what they learned on Transformers. And that made me extremely comfortable with how ambitious to get with Iron Man. Because I've always been a bit of a skeptic about CGI. I think primarily because it hasn't been done right in many cases.
A challenge was, I think, initially to impress him with the idea that we could make the Iron Man suit look pretty seamless and realistic.
I love this suit!
The other issue was that there were some very beautiful practical suits created by what was then known as Stan Winston Studios. Robert, he was finding the suit very uncomfortable to wear, and so he would usually pull 1 or 2 pieces off just so that he had more freedom of his arm movements. It was clearly still constricting, so he pulled more and more pieces off, and in the end I said, look, let's pull it all off. I'm confident, based on what we've done, that we can replace the whole thing. And so we did. We pulled it all off, and I was putting the markers on Robert, and he's like, I love you, because it was so happy that he could just now act and emote, and we would just add it all digitally later.